Hey guys, again, thanks for coming to the channel. It's Greg Alexander, and today I want to do part 3 of my line series. I did the fluorocarbon, I did the braid, and now we're going to talk about monofilament. And you know, everybody knows what monofilament is. It's probably still the most widely used line that there is. And what makes monofilament monofilament? Monofilament is exactly what it says. It's one single strand of nylon, basically, and without any braids or anything in it. And we have two types of monofilament. You have XL and XT. So XT, T stands for tough. XL, L stands for limber or loose or limp. So that tells you basically the two types of monofilaments that you have. So when you shop for monofilament, if you're looking for something that's real tough or more abrasion resistant, it's got a harder shell on it, you know, better for a flipping heavy cover, then you'd want the XT. The drawbacks to the ST are it tends to get more kinky and less supple and just doesn't handle quite as well on longer casts than an XL would. So then, you know, with the XL, you're dealing with limp, you're dealing with where you want to skip something, or you want to make long casts, or you're cranking, things where, you know, the line's not really kind of rubbing against a bunch of abrasive things, whatever they may be, you know, rocks, dock pilings, branches, things like that. So, but then there's another type of, actually two more types of monofilament. One would be copolymer. And a copolymer monofilament is basically a limp interior and a tough exterior. So it's kind of a blend of the XL and the XT. And you kind of getting the best of both worlds. So you're getting a super tough abrasion resistant line that still has enough limber to it that it responds well. You know, doesn't get, you know, it's not hard to handle, not hard to fish with, like some of the tougher lines would be. And then the final kind of monofilament would be like a fluorocarbon coated monofilament. Like FluoroClear is one that they make. I'm not a big fan of those. I understand why they made them. They're trying to make monofilament, you know, more invisible and give it a little bit more abrasion resistant with the fluorocarbon coating. But in my experience in trying FluoroClear and some of these other lines, man, they're just not good. It's just not a good line. I mean, you know, just either go monofilament or go fluorocarbon. It's just not a good line at all. A good way to remember the qualities of monofilament is to think of it as no BS. What do you mean no BS? Well, it actually is BS. It's BS. Because monofilament's qualities that make it different from other lines are it's buoyant, B, floats pretty good, doesn't sink real fast, and if you were to peel monofilament out onto the water, if you were backlash or something, it just kind of sits right there, where if you do that with fluorocarbon, it sinks pretty quick. And then S would be stretch. So it stretches more than, you know, fluorocarbon. It stretches way more than braid. And so when you're looking for a line that you want some stretch, then that would be the line that you would select. And some of the other characters of monofilament are it's probably the least abrasion resistant of the lines. And the good part about monofilament is it's cheap. I mean, if you're on a budget, you know, monofilament will work. It will work for you. I fished nothing but monofilament for 25 years probably. Nothing but monofilament. I didn't fish braid. I didn't fish fluorocarbon. You know, even though braid came out, you know, Spectra and Dyneema came out a little bit, you know, later, and fluorocarbon came out a little bit later. I fished monofilament exclusively and just basically changed the test in the coloring, whether it was green or fluorescent or clear, depending on what I was trying to do, and XL or XT depending on what I was trying to do. So what are the uses for monofilament? Like I said, you can use it for anything. You know, there's some people that use it for almost everything, if not everything. They're used to it. They understand how it responds. They understand that they need to, you know, probably tend it a little bit more, which means, you know, you need to retie a lot more with monofilament than you do with fluorocarbon, especially braid, where you may not need to retie at all. So it needs a lot more tending. But, you know, some people understand what they're getting from monofilament. You know, you can take monofilament and it may work real good on one rod, but if you put that same pound test monofilament on a different action rod, it might not accomplish what you're looking for. See, because it's combination. It's the combination. It's not just the line. It's the combination of the line and its properties to the rod and the reel that you're throwing. So if you're throwing a really, really stiff rod and you're throwing, you know, a really, really tough high test monofilament, you know, you're not going to get a lot of stretch with that. And that may be something you want to do in flipping and pitching situations where you don't want any stretch, but you don't want the braid and you don't want the fluorocarbon. Throw a high test monofilament and like an XT that, you know, is real tough also with a stiff rod, and you can accomplish that, you know, manhandling of that fish. Where with, you know, fluorocarbon and its lower stretch properties, if you were to, you know, put it on the same rod sometimes and set the hook the same way you set the hook with monofilament, then you may even have issues breaking your line, because, you know, fluorocarbon is not as shock resistant as monofilament, although they make some shock resistant fluorocarbons just for that purpose. So you got to combine your line to the rod and the reel. Uses for me, as far as where I still throw monofilament. I still throw monofilament. I have one rod rigged up with a 40 or a 400 series spinning reel and a 7-foot medium, basically medium heavy spinning rod, and I use that rig to skip like a Texas rig Senko in heavy cover. And I use 15-pound big game, which is a shock resistant tough line, on that particular rod and reel setup. And on a spinning reel, man, it's almost impossible to break that line. That is some of the toughest monofilament that there is, at big game in 15-pound. I used to almost exclusively flip a big jig on 20-pound big game line, green, almost exclusively, except in, you know, more clear water situations, or when I made a smaller or was throwing a smaller jig presentation, I used to throw 17. But I don't throw monofilament with a jig anymore. I've gotten used to the fluorocarbon, and that's what I use. And I got my rods, you know, medium heavy most of the time with the fluorocarbon, not heavy, because I would need to up my fluorocarbon with a heavy rod. So then the other way that I would throw monofilament would be in what I call short line winding situations. For example, if I'm throwing a spinnerbait or something, or a chatterbait or square bill out across a point, long distances out across, you know, scattered grass, just making generally longer casts with it, then I'm probably going to stick with the fluorocarbon still, because I don't want the stretch. But if I'm working a bank or docks or something close by where I'm making pinpoint accurate cast with, you know, a square bill or a spinnerbait or a chatterbait, then a lot of times I'm going to go back to that monofilament and not the fluorocarbon, because you'll take the lure away from your fish, because you lose that stretch that you need, and sometimes your reaction time is a little bit fast with the fluorocarbon, where the fish has not got a chance to really get it good, and you'll lose some fish. Or they're really hot sometimes close to the boat. You know, if you're fishing close down a bank, the fish are really hot. Boom, you got him, and he's hot, and you don't have any stretch, and you're lining it all with the fluorocarbon where you will with the monofilament. So in those short line situations, I'll sometimes use monofilament. And another time that I use monofilament, I actually use the P-line. This P-line, this Copolymer P-line, a 10-pound, and I use that in two situations. I throw the Copolymer P-line when I'm throwing smallish crankbaits, you know, casting them, not real close stuff. Smallish crankbaits. I just have a lot of confidence in that line. That line, you know, it doesn't sink like fluorocarbon. I'm fishing relatively shallow water. I don't want my bait going down, you know, especially any deeper than it's rated for, like fluorocarbon to pull your bait down sometimes. It has some stretch, and that stretch will really save you, along with a good moderate action rod. If you have a good fast tip moderate action rod and, you know, some P-line fluorocarbon or P-line copolymer, then your hookup and landing ratio is going to go way up. Where, you know, if you throw fluorocarbon the same way, you're going to lose a lot of stretch. Then you got to make that stretch up with, you know, even a more limber rod than maybe is good for casting. You understand? So you can limber your rod out because you're line, but then your rod becomes so limber that you lose casting control with it. So you want to get that about, you know, in the right place. And for me, the right place is a moderate action crankbait rod with 10-pound P-line for most cranking situations for me. And then the other instance that I would use P-line, which is a monofilament, it's a copolymer, but it's a monofilament, is on small topwater baits, like small poppers, small brines B, Kelly J pops, whatever you want to call them. Any type of little popping type, small treble hook topwater bait. I prefer the P-line to the fluorocarbon. Again, we're dealing with little tiny treble hooks, like number 6s in these small baits. And that stretch that I feel like I need is there, because a lot of times I'll be doing that in close quarters again. I'm casting around bushes, trees, laydowns, docks. I need the accuracy. I'm close. Fluorocarbon just doesn't give me enough stretch combined with the accuracy of the rod that I'm looking for to present my bait properly. And, you know, with braid, for example, and treble hook baits, you tend to have a lot of tangle. The line gets tangled into treble hooks a lot with braid. And you could throw braid with a leader, but then you're going to lose your stretch again, and then you have to limber your rod up again, and then you need, you know, then you're going to lose some accuracy in your casting. So big game line, trilene big game. Here's a spool of it. You can tell I buy it by the big spool in 15-pound. And the P-line, copolymer line, to me, are basically the only two monofilament lines that I throw anymore. So that's my deal on monofilament. It's not as extensive as some of the other videos that I made online. Again, if you like my videos, you want to watch them on a regular basis, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, the little bell alert thing. Share them with your friends, post comment in the bottom, and have a blessed day.